Good evening, dear viewers. You are watching a special edition of US Week in Review. In 10-15 minutes, we will run through the most important, interesting, and relevant events that have occurred in the United States in recent hours. This is Hamster NBC, and here's what you need to know. Large-scale peaceful protests under the slogan, No Kings. Major demonstrations under the slogan, No Kings Rallies, have taken place in several dozen cities across the country, with participants expressing dissatisfaction with the administration's policies and accusing the government of excessive concentration of power. Despite their scale, the protests have been peaceful in most cases, without major incidents. Protesters are raising themes such as the restriction of freedoms, rising elitism, corporate influence, and government accountability. Analysts note that such mass protests are a sign of growing social anxiety and distrust in government institutions. What's important? The demonstrations took place in a year when many Americans are feeling the impact of inflation, a crisis of confidence, and political instability. Authorities must respond. The key risk is that the protests will escalate into a more radical phase or become a platform for new political movements. Immigration policy and the use of force. In Chicago and several other cities, controversy has flared up again over the work of federal immigration agencies and their interactions with local authorities. The former director of U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement stated that immigration raids put agents in a terrible situation. A Chicago court ruled that agency employees must wear body cameras during operations. Meanwhile, the presidential administration is considering the widespread use of National Guard and federal resources against illegal immigration and social unrest. Why it matters? Immigration remains one of the hottest issues among voters, and federal intervention in city-states increases the risk of conflict between levels of government. Court decisions and local government actions could set precedents for the coming years. How federal authorities will be limited and how local communities will resist. Economic and industrial shift. Manufacturing returns to the U.S. Amid global economic pressures and supply chain disruptions, several major companies have announced expansions of production capacity in the U.S. For example, automaker Stellantis and home appliance giant Whirlpool have invested significantly in building a new workforce and infrastructure. This is part of a broader trend. Companies are turning to domestic production to reduce their dependence on external supply chains and respond to crises. What to watch out for? This could mean a significant shift in jobs in the US. The manufacturing sector could get a second wind. This raises the question, will the new jobs be high quality, with good pay and stability, or simply a relocation of low-paid functions? In the context of inflation and rising wages, this is an important factor for labor policy and social protection. Geopolitics and the US. Tensions are rising. While the main news comes from the United States, important foreign policy signals are also reflected domestically. For example, the United States is increasing its attention to situations in the Caribbean and South America, issuing warnings to citizens and working with governments. Relations with allies and adversaries are once again coming to the forefront. How the United States acts abroad directly impacts domestic policy. Why this matters? Geopolitics affects the budget, defense aid, the dollar exchange rate and investment, and therefore every American. And domestically, external threats are often used in the argument that we must be strong, which can be reflected in legislation on homeland security and civil rights. What's next, and what to prepare for? If protests persist or intensify, authorities will likely tighten measures, including the use of police and the National Guard. This could lead to new conflicts between the state and federal levels. Economic changes are becoming more profound. The return of manufacturing is a positive sign, but it will be important to see how evenly the benefits are distributed across regions. Immigration and foreign policy will remain at the forefront, with each new measure being tracked as a domestic event. Discussion about the balance between freedoms and security, between central government and state law, and between global challenges and local stability will intensify in the media and society. Thank you for your attention. Stay tuned and see you in our next issue, where we'll continue to cover key developments within the United States.